the news that broke on Friday. Ironically, on a Friday afternoon, Brock
The
Purdy.
dump?
Yeah, I think that's overrated. Anyway, the Friday news dump, it doesn't matter anymore.
I don't know.
Get
I
their
think
news. I think more
it
people,
happens.
but like more people are probably on social media now on the weekend, or like getting their news on the weekend more than they were ever.
Oh yeah, I mean it doesn't, but I think it still happens. The question is who dumped it. Like that's the key here, is where did the leak come from? That tells you which side was not happy with the outcome of the negotiation.
Well, Brock Purdy is locked up here in San Francisco, 5 years, $265 million. It comes in what, about 53 million or so per year for Brock Purdy, which I think, well, what are your initial thoughts on the Purdy contract here?
Yeah, so obviously there's a bunch of different ways of looking at contracts like this. Everyone immediately goes to the average per year. There's also the guaranteed money. It was $181 million of guaranteed money as well. Overall, I think my initial reaction is that's less than I expected the contract to be. So I think that's a good deal from San Francisco's perspective. And I believe the leak, or the kind of the announcement, it came from the agent side of it. Like, it wasn't, the team didn't put this out. This had come from, here's the agent saying the deal's done type of deal. I think the 49ers have done a good job here. Look, we can debate, and we will continue to debate, just how good Brock Purdy is, but clearly they were going to extend him. Like, I don't think they were ever reaching a point where the downturn in play last year, like, we never reached a point where they were like, you know what, let's go in a different direction. Let's move on from Brock Purdy. He's in that Dak Prescott category of, could you upgrade upon him? Absolutely. Is it a good chance that you're able to do that if you decide, no, here's what you're worth, we're going in a different direction if you want more than that? Not really. And okay, you've got the added complicating factor of Kyle Shanahan versus Dallas, right? It would have made it theoretically even easier for San Francisco. But at the point where they're going to give Brock Purdy the extension, this is a pretty good deal. He's come in the Tua contract, later on with a higher salary cap. Same with, Trevor Lawrence, all those guys that signed previously, typically the number does not go down. It goes up, right? It doesn't matter if the quarterback is less good than the guys that signed previously. It's like, who was the last guy to sign? This is the contract we're working from, and then adjust it for inflation. They didn't. They moved it in the opposite direction a touch. So from San Francisco's perspective, I think that's great business. And honestly, this is probably where the deal should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it landed in a good spot, even for both. I mean, I don't want to say for both, just because you probably had more leverage maybe if you're on the Brock Purdy side here. But yeah, I thought it was good for San Francisco because of everything that you said there. How many times have we said that guy's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL? I mean, it started 10 years ago. Joe Flacco was the highest paid for a minute, and then you just kept knocking off the top guy. It was like, next up, who's next up? We have seen a slight shift in the last couple of years, though, of more middle class type of quarterback deals, like a Sam Darnold. Purdy's not a middle class deal by any means, but it's certainly a lower of the high end new deals, where we had been in this trend where next guy up is going to get, like, as soon as Dak got 60, it's like, all right, who's going to get 61? Who's going to get 62? Burrow just signed, and Trevor Lawrence just signed, and Josh Allen just restructured, but who's going to be the next guy that's up over 60? So I think it ends up in a good situation. I also wonder how much sometimes prior draft status factors in the fact that he was Mr. Irrelevant and was a 7th round pick. That is working against Brock Purdy. If he was the number 1 overall pick or just a 1st round pick and he played the way he did statistically, you'd be talking about him as 65, 70 million. But all those little buts added up. Yeah, but Kyle Shanahan. Yeah, but he doesn't have the best tools in the world as far as arm goes. Yeah, but he was the 7th rounder. Those little things added up where I think there was a little bit of a sacrifice made in his camp, but also he's coming from Mr. Irrelevant salary to, 181 million guaranteed. That's got to feel great for Brock Purdy. So congrats to him.
Yeah, I forget where I saw this stat, but it was something like, his average salary for being Mr. Irrelevant has been like $900 and something thousand. He's going to earn that every 3 days or something during this contract. Like, wow. He's basically making his average salary from his rookie deal every 3 days on the current contract, which is pretty nuts. It's interesting. Like, so you have got this added layer now of these like middle class contracts that have started to be done. I think we might be starting to see this like upper middle class contract as well. Like all the guys. So Josh Allen, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and we can throw Trevor Lawrence in there as well as a former number one overall pick who may still have the capacity to be an elite quarterback and maybe getting paid as if they believe he can get there. But let's call that like top tier. The Dak contract is top tier, adjusted for bad process where you have no leverage and you have to give him whatever he wants. So the Dak contract is almost an outlier at this point at $60 million a year. 55 is where the elite quarterbacks who sign get put, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, etc. And then you're starting to see this like next tier down where the quarterbacks where clearly there's a significant influence in their play from scheme, coach, or something else, right? So Tua, people, the detractors that don't like Tua will be like, it's all Mike McDaniel and the system and everybody around him. Tua's not that good. Jared Goff for years. It's all Ben Johnson. It's not Jared Goff. We've already seen him not play that well. Clearly, Jared Goff is being propped up. Now this Brock Purdy deal, the group that with when they sign should be on more money. There does seem to be this little discount getting applied now for supporting cast and coaching and all those other elements that we know factors in, but for years was not being reflected in the contracts that were signed. All of a sudden, I think we are starting to see there be a discount applied to these contracts for those situations.
Hey guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now. I do wonder how much just one pass to Purdy missed a kind of open throw in the Super Bowl that would have won it for San Francisco, just like Jimmy Garoppolo did back in 2019.
Right.
If Purdy just hits one or two more throws or completes like a 3rd and 4, they run a slant on 3rd and 4 that would have sealed the deal, gets batted at the line. If they completed one more pass, is Purdy just like, well, of course he's worth over 60. I mean, that's why Flacco got the top deal when he did, because they won the Super Bowl. It was a little bit of back pay. Like if we've already won a Super Bowl with him, it is wild how coming down to like one throw probably affected things for Brock Purdy.
Oh, I mean, if Flacco doesn't make that throw, Flacco might not get the contract. Like he saved his career with an absurdly timed run for that Super Bowl, kind of like Eli Manning the first time. Eli Manning in 2007, if he doesn't go on that run, we would have been having a very different conversation about Eli Manning and what kind of second contract, if any, he would get given his career to that point. Those two guys, one after the other, actually, now that I think about it, timed their runs amazingly. Like Brock Purdy has played significantly better now than either of those quarterbacks had, to the point where they won their first and then their Super Bowl in the case of Joe Flacco. Like, Purdy's play, whatever we think about it, has been significantly better than I think either of those guys up until that point.
Yeah, that's the final thing I just want to say about Purdy, and just to put a bow on it. I've cited Kyle Shanahan in his history of elevating quarterbacks. Let's just go through that really quickly. As the play caller for Matt Schaub, remember there was a point when Matt Schaub was the quarterback, and it was Gary Kubiak as head coach. Kyle was a big part of everything that they did there. And some you'd say, it was right as the stats were starting to really skew towards this era, and people would be like, look up Matt Schaub's stats. Do you see his passer rating relative to history and his yards per attempt and everything? And part of it was the era, and part of it was like even within his era, Matt Schaub was excellent statistically. Then you have RG3 have one of the best rookie seasons of all time in 2012. That regressed in part because of injury, in part because stylistically he didn't want to do it. Then we see Matt Ryan. There was a learning curve for a year. Then Matt Ryan, who's already a good quarterback, has one of the best statistical seasons of all time under Kyle Shanahan and wins the MVP in 2016. Then they go get Jimmy Garoppolo, who had started 2 NFL games with the New England Patriots. Look at his stats historically, yards per attempt and passer rating and the whole thing. Kyle Shanahan, a big part of Jimmy Garoppolo, putting up all those numbers to the point where the stat nerds were like, well, just look at EPA, just look at the stats. They're great. The quarterback's the biggest driver for those things. And the detractors were like, hey, watch the film. Garoppolo's missing a ton of throws, getting away with a ton of stuff, throwing 3rd and 13 screens to Deebo Samuel for first downs. This is Kyle and the supporting cast. But there's just this history. And then Brock Purdy comes in and does the same thing, except better. And so I put him squarely as the second best quarterback that Kyle's worked with, I think, as far as, maybe he's similar to Matt Schaub at the end of the day, just in a later era. But Purdy's brought more to the table with his legs. He's been excellent at what Kyle needs, which is quick decision-making, finding the open man, throwing the ball accurately, despite not having a cannon for an arm. I think he's right there below. I think he's significantly below. Okay. I think Matt Ryan's clearly a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, but I think Purdy's right below Matt Ryan as far as what Kyle Shanahan has had at the position.
But I also think critically, so again, this is the debate we've been having for years, literally since Purdy broke on the scene and started to play really well. How much is Brock Purdy? How much is Shanahan? How much is the weaponry around him? Like, each of these things takes up a little piece of that credit pie that I talk about. And ultimately, it doesn't matter until you get to contract time, because that's when you need to actually put a financial number on effectively those percentages, those slice of the pie. Like that, how much is Brock Purdy dictates how much you should pay him. Because if it's not that much, you should go somewhere else, or you should be wanting to give him a much cheaper contract. But the thing that I think characterizes Purdy relative to all these other quarterbacks that have worked with Shanahan is, I think they're a stronger combination as a duo than they are just the sum of their parts, because Purdy's best traits are the areas where Shanahan's offense runs out of answers, right? His best trait is ad-libbing late in the down, scrambling, making something happen where the play is broken down. Shanahan's superpower is the offense has the answers, right? You run what I tell you to run. There's going to be an open guy 15 to 17 yards deep in the middle of the field, and we just pitch and catch, and it's wide open first downs all day long. But on the few occasions where that is not true, you need to make something happen. And if most of the quarterbacks in that offense are not good at that, right? They're very good at painting by numbers and doing what Shanahan says and taking what's there. But when it breaks down, the play's dead. And so the kind of the total of how good this offense can be is basically how good everything is. And then when it runs out of answers, it runs out of answers. Purdy's got something different to that group where he's very good at the pitch and catch, paint by number stuff, but he's also very good at the ad-libbing late in the down, finding answers for the few occasions where the offense runs out of them. And I think that's why, maybe he's not worth $53 million a year on average relative to, how good he would be in any other offense, right? But I do think he's better in this offense than he would be in a lot of other offenses, because that skill helps to mitigate not a weakness of the Shanahan offense, but like helps it when it falls over.
I lost who said it in the chat, but the question was, why do we downgrade quarterbacks who are quick processors, hit the open man, do everything we're describing with Purdy? And I would say, I don't think we do. I mean, I think in football, the challenge when you're evaluating individual players is always the A/B analysis. So no one really denigrated Tom Brady or Drew Brees for playing the style that they played. But after they were gone in their respective places, we've seen people not be able to replicate what they did. So they were probably the biggest drivers for their success. With Purdy, we have a lot of this other evidence of Kyle and his impact and the playmakers, right? Like when you were listing playmakers for the Niners, we have rarely seen Brock Purdy without a supporting cast that you would list as top 3. I mean, we just haven't seen much of it. We've seen it with injuries a little bit off and on the last couple of years, but as far as pass catchers go, as far as play caller goes, I wouldn't say offensive line as a whole, but he certainly had, Trent Williams at left tackle and at least a good enough offensive line these last few years. We haven't seen much of Brock Purdy without. So let's see him without. And look, there was a point in Patrick Mahomes' career where you could say the same thing. Like, Mahomes is great. No one's going to take that away. But we haven't seen him without Hall of Famer Tyreek Hill, Hall of Famer Travis Kelce. He still won a Super Bowl and an MVP, or 2 Super Bowls without Tyreek, and with Travis Kelce getting older and slower. So you say, okay, maybe Mahomes is the driver here. It's almost like a let's see more evidence piece here for Brock Purdy. Whereas with others, again, if Jimmy Garoppolo's done nothing outside of Kyle Shanahan, and Matt Schaub, we never got to see him outside of Kyle Shanahan. We never got to see RG3 outside of Kyle Shanahan. So that's the evidence that you would use that would be on the yeah, but side. Here's all this production from Brock Purdy, but we've also seen this from several other quarterbacks who did little elsewhere.
Yeah, I think all that is true. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.